Hello, this is Don Victor, author of Drawn to Win, host of the podcast Drawn to Win, the director of the Academy of Composition, and the creator of the Core 80 Experience, also known as the See and Grow Rich in Art video course, which you can find out more information at core80.com. This is the Drawn to Win podcast, where I have the incredible privilege to draw artists from around the world into fun and meaningful conversations around art and life, and yes, maybe even a little food. You can hear us each week on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube. So make sure you subscribe so you always have a seat among friends. Let's get into the show. Welcome you, Holy Spirit, into this conversation as we talk about creativity and life, that we may know the one who created life even greater, and in doing that, create more beautiful and cool artwork too. So with that said, bless this conversation. And Cheryl, welcome into the conversation.
Thank you, Don Victor. It's great to be here.
So where are you from? What state are you in right now?
I'm in Texas. I'm in a little town between Austin and San Antonio called New Braunfels, Texas.
Wow. And have you been in Texas for a while, like your whole life, a couple of years? Like what?
I came to Austin for law school 35 years ago.
Now, something I know about law school is that you had a life before law school. So we'll get into that.
Before and after.
Yeah, before and after. So what as an artist, what is something that you're currently working on?
Well, what I'm really working on is developing composition, and through taking your Core 80 class and talking with you on the phone. And I've always painted intuitively. People like my work, but it's very not studied, and I want to do it on purpose. And right now I am working on a collection of 5 paintings where the subject matter is a little village in Italy that I'm just captivated by. It's called Civita di Bagnoregio, which means the little village of the bath of the king, or the royal bath.
What, and really?
Yep, it's up on a hill, and it's an old village. I don't know if you've been to Italy, but they'll build one person's terrace on top of another person's roof, as the steepness of the hill goes. Anyway, this village is eroding from the outside. The outside edges are crumbling down. And little by little, the outer edges of the houses, one will fall and they'll just move to another house. And there's still other buildings and people do live there and do business there. But the only way you can get there, because the road has washed away, is through a pedestrian bridge. And I didn't mention this, but I realized it when I was filling out the form to prepare for this podcast. I was taking an art class 3 years ago, and I had to miss a class. And I asked my good friend Nancy to give me the assignment. And she said, paint what's on page 61. So I don't do anything small. I come in with a huge 4-foot canvas. I don't remember the dimensions. And I have drawn in Sharpie my image of what's on page 61, which was a line drawing, which could not have been less interesting. And it was the wrong assignment.
Oh.
Okay. But somehow my teacher let me keep going with it, and I couldn't get anything. I had no imagination about this. It was just a line drawing, And I thought, I'm going to have to find out where this place is. So I Googled it, and I think I sent you a photograph of Civita di Bagnoregio.
Yeah.
And it is, to me, it captures something in my soul, a message of something that's eternal and crumbling at the same time, which to me is like life. you're always in a state of decay and dying and falling away at the same time that you just stand on bedrock
Mm.
and trying to find your way up there, make your way up these, traversing diagonals up the face of this hill to get to this beautiful little village. And it was captivating to me, so I painted it, and then I painted it again, and then I painted it again, and then I took a little tiny bit of your Core 80 class and painted it again using the armature, but nothing else, because I hadn't learned anything else yet in
Mm-hmm.
composition. I've never studied composition. My painting teacher here will not teach it. He was educated in the 60s, and my understanding is that in the 1960s it wasn't very popular to teach the old way of doing things with
Yeah.
composition. And he's kind of an old hippie, and I'm kind of an old hippie myself. And but I believe in math. So anyway, that's the beginning of my story. Is Civita di Bagno Regio. I'm doing 5 different paintings of that village with different messages.
Mm. And so far, in terms of like the design and stuff, what is one of the aspects that's really empowered you to communicate yourself with confidence and clarity? What's one of the
The
things?
basic thrust map, the dominant vertical, the dominant horizontal, and the dominant diagonal have given me a certain confidence. And it's just, this is a baby step. It's like you said, this is a toddler painting. I'm new in this, but it gives me confidence to just nail it. And I maybe nail it. You've seen my picture, and it's very clearly, following that map.
Now, for anyone who's listening, if you want to know what the thrust map is, about 2 weeks ago from the time of this recording, I was praying about the academy and art and things like that, and I just kind of was impressed that what's more important, dying and selling a few hundred or a few thousand of these courses, or reaching 1 million people with this message. And so with that, if you go to the academyofcomposition.com/gift, I am gifting something there that helps reveal what that thrust map is. And so if you go there, you'll get an understanding of what the thrust map is. Okay. Now, so you use the thrust map in that image, and when we saw it the first time, when you brought it to me, um, what was it doing? What were the benefits of it, and what was the next level that you had to then go to?
Well, tell me if I'm not getting your question right, but in the painting that you initially saw, um, I was painting it for a suicide prevention exhibit.
Mm-hmm.
And what I felt it expressed is the vulnerability of making our way in life with those diagonal lines back and forth, a little bit that the path is obscured, back and forth winding up the hill, and sometimes the path is in darkness, but that there is a destination, and the dominant diagonal in my painting points right to the entrance to the village. And that destination was also the point of highest contrast. So I just wanted to make it really clear. It's there. You're going to get there. Just don't give up. Stay the course. And it rests on these eternal pillars of this vertical mountain that it's almost a sheer drop.
Mm.
And it's perilous. It is life-threatening. And but when you get to the top, I meant for it to be expansive. It's far above the horizon. It's all horizontal lines. I even made some of the roof lines horizontal, even though they're not in the real village. And so there's a certain expansiveness and openness and majesty that is available peace, rest, home, if you stay the course.
Hmm. And then, what in the other images? What are some of the different emotions that you want people to feel or think about?
Well, in the first image, my lines were absolutely straight and my diagonals were very confrontational. And I wanted to paint something new that conveys a more playful attitude with more arcs and swirls and birds and clouds. Same image almost exactly, just with some of the lines softened, made into curves instead of straight lines. More like playing hide and seek or
Mm,
clambering up the hill, adventurous. And I put people in this second one. So you're not coming to an empty village that may be dying to the point of being abandoned, but you're coming to a village with a town square and lights in the windows and things like that.
it's beautiful. That's beautiful. It's going to be fantastic, fantastic, as we say,
Okay.
um, to see all five this way. What's beautiful about when you compose images together like that, your skill grows together, and so you'll have these five images that feel like they belong to the same family, rather than like different aged friends. Like, oh, this is one I did. If I did a series of 10 and I did the first one, finished it, did the second one, finished it. Well, by the time you hit 10, you've improved so much that they kind of look like they're just, you know, uh, the little rascals. They play together, but they don't really relate together.
Yeah.
And so it's beautiful to see you. I was like giving birth to these five paintings. Um,
Yeah, I'm already seeing that because you and I talked about that I have a fear of just making a mark,
hmm,
putting a mark on a canvas. It's like, oh, I can't undo it once it's done. And especially because I haven't shared this with you, but I've only painted in watercolor until 3 years ago.
oh wow.
So if you make a mark in watercolor, you commit it. And so I just was, it wasn't a good plan. And so you suggested, and I love the suggestion to just make a mark and go ahead and smack my thigh, and or just have a rubber band on my wrist and twang the rubber band and just say, there you go. There's the bad thing that's going to happen if you screw up, and just keep making marks. Also, I'm doing layers and layers of tracing paper. What
Hmm.
I've seen since you made that suggestion is the first canvas I started working on, you can't even see the lines. You can't even see it. I did it in pencil, I did it with transfer paper, and the lines are so faint that when you and I met last week, I didn't even show you a photograph of it. The next one, I have very faint watercolor. It's very pastel. The
Hmm.
next one I drew in Sharpie on tracing paper with much more clear lines. And the final one I colored in Sharpie a huge volume map. And it's so much more graphic design looking than these little hen scratches, these timid hen scratches that I made. So yeah, they're all related, but I'm watching my confidence grow and my willingness to make a mistake.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You're growing. That's the name of the game, is to grow, to
Yep.
expand. So, Cheryl, let's get into little Cheryl. Um, like, where did your love for art come from, and what's your journey with it?
Oh, well, when you say little Cheryl, I think about little me. Well, I'm adopted, and that informs my whole way of being in the world. I was adopted when I was 3 months old,
Oh wow.
which means that I lost my first mother. And that just was such a terrible grief for me, even at 3 months old. It
Hmm.
was terrible. And I do know her now. We reconnected when I was in my 40s, and that's been a great gift. But part of the way that I related to the world was rather timid, although I have a very big personality. Ask anybody, they'll say, what? She's talking about being timid. I don't believe it. Um, afraid of being sent back to the orphanage, or losing
Mm-hmm.
my family, losing my people, that sort of thing. And drawing was a way for me to get really present with myself
Mm-hmm.
and really protected from whatever drama was going on in my family.
Wow. I love that you say that because
Yeah,
that's very similar to my story where when my dad died when I was 5, I began to draw and I liked the attention of it because it came out good. But ultimately, for me, um, being raised in foster care, you never really had anything that you could count on. There's always a fear of losing your home, like all the time. So the only thing I could count on that was consistent was my ability to draw, and I like how you said that it brought you present, right? Um, out of the circumstances that you were in, and that's kind of this very, 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 very similar to my relationship with art. It's interesting.
yeah.
Hmm.
It's a way of regulating my emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So if I felt upset or scared or grief stricken, I could draw and wait and watch while those big feelings moved through me.
Mm-hmm.
And it just helped me kind of integrate it.
Mm.
And then there were times when I couldn't draw and times when I didn't. And those, I think those feelings didn't get digested, if that makes sense. They're still kind of noodling around in there, waiting for a chance to express and be integrated with the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it. And drawing was also something I did to show my love for people. I would draw pictures for them,
Oh, that's cool.
and I draw people. I draw cartoon-like things of my whole family. So, and it looks like my family. Even now I do that, and it's kind of a way I say hello. I'm thinking about you, and the family members really like that.
That's awesome.
And I draw fantasy scapes, which is a lot what this village is. Places that I could go explore.
And how do you define fantasy scapes?
When I was young, when I was a kid, I would draw fairy tale castles. My dream house, I was very big on drawing blueprints for my dream house,
Hmm.
and environments and landscapes that I would want to explore with winding paths in them. It's kind of funny that I'm doing that again now. So it was a way to be present with myself, but sometimes it was a way to get out of where I was.
And how old were you when you started doing that?
I would say 3 or 4.
Okay. Wow, that's amazing. That's awesome. And then, so then as you got older and your art matured and like, let's say like you're in your early 20s, what were you doing?
Well, I went to college and I took oil painting and drawing and life drawing and studied psychology, and really loved the results with everything that I did. Every exercise we did in class, I was like, wow, that really looks like an onion. That really looks like a rack of antlers.
Rick
And
Antlers.
and I would do the kind of drawing where you don't lift your pencil off the paper and you don't look at the paper, and draw people while they were moving without looking at the paper. And it was so cool because it really did look like the energy of a person moving across the page. And it actually looked like the person I was drawing. So that was super cool. But I mentioned this in my questionnaire. I really had a strong sense that the world demanded that I do something more serious.
Hmm.
Trying to see where I wrote that down. Get serious, get, I don't know, realistic, And so I started focusing on things other than art, you know. And you asked me the questions. You know what my story is. I don't want to jump ahead.
No, no. Who was that told you that?
Well, one of them was my dad. God bless him. He's an engineer and a banker. And you know, I went to psychology school because I wanted to work with children and do play therapy and art therapy. That was my
Mm-hmm.
dream. And you know, there were kids like me. I didn't know that. That's what they were. Kids who were having a hard time digesting life. And he took me out to lunch with a friend of his who was a psychologist while I was in college. And she said, "You're going to be broke and unemployed for the rest of your life if you're just." And I didn't even know that as a psychologist, I would never want to be employed. I'm self-employed now. I love being self-employed. It does take courage. It is a huge risk. But you know, at 21, I was prepared to just chuck the whole thing because I got this realistic advice from somebody. I would have been an awesome psychologist, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And instead I said, well, I can't do that. I better focus on more serious things. So I never took another art class after my freshman year.
Wow. Wow. And then,
Yeah.
wow.
But
So
I
then,
did bring, we'll get to it, but I did still doodle, you know, and
uh-huh.
I did posters in law school and put them up all over the school, funny things, you know. And there's a day, believe it or not, called National Ask a Stupid Question Day. And I drew a poster for its National Ask a Stupid Question Day because lawyers, you may or may not know, are deeply concerned about appearing foolish.
Yeah, lawyers are tricky people.
Yeah.
I I had to sit in front of a lawyer the other day, and I was like, be very cautious because no matter what they look like, they could be these little shrewd, intelligent serpents sitting right there, and they look like these little innocent doves sometimes.
Oh,
And so you're
yeah.
like, yeah, be very cautious.
Yeah, they're a tricky bunch.
Yeah.
But
Uh,
but so you know, so I puttered and I bought a little pan of watercolor paints from the local department store and kind of carried that around with me and puttered throughout my life until about 3 years ago I started a serious art show.
but before we start going there, I want to hear the story from you. What happened that that someone told you about you would make a good lawyer? Like,
Okay. So I was convinced, you know, that I should not be a psychologist, and my boyfriend helped me out. He was a very smart, good-looking, tall guy. I avoid those folks, and had a drug problem in college, and he robbed a bank. And his lawyer asked me to write in support of him. And I wrote, you know, I was a psychology major. I wrote a little 2-page psychology dissertation on his behalf and said, listen, this guy's smart. He's a leader of men. He's president of his fraternity. And men want to be like him. You put him in prison, he's going to come out running a criminal enterprise. How is that going to serve society? Get him some drug rehab. And this was in early 1980s when the American Medical Association said cocaine was not something a person could become addicted to.
okay.
Yeah, now we call it crack, and we know you'll sell your grandmother for it. But
So
back
your
in
grandmother
the
for it.
early 80s, you know, what did anybody know? And they said, no, it's not an addictive drug. Well, even despite that, the judge thought I had made a good point and sentenced him to a secure drug rehabilitation facility rather
Mm.
than prison. And his lawyer called me and said the judge had quoted my letter during the sentencing. And I was like 20 years old. And he said, you know, have you ever thought about being a lawyer? Because you'd be a good one. And I said, well, I've just been talked out of being a psychologist, so I'll give it a shot. And I took a couple of law classes and I did not do well in them. And I took a career aptitude test and it said, you really need to work with your hands. You're more structural and visual oriented. You should not do anything that requires abstract thought, such as law or psychology. and, and I said, tell me I can't do something. And I devoted the next 14 years of my life to
Proving that you don't like it.
becoming a lawyer, proving that I could do it, and hating almost every minute of it.
Ay, 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 ay.
But I did make really, really good friends in law school.
Wow, that's
And
cool.
that was the great blessing of that period of time.
So, when you were a lawyer, tell us a story, at least one story that brings joy to you.
Oh gosh, joy story. Well, this is an art story kind of.
Okay.
I wrote clemency petitions for battered women who had killed the batterer in self-defense, and they were sentenced, and there was no more room for, it being overturned. But I wrote petitions to the governor to just pardon them, just because the governor can do that. And it was not in Texas, and probably never will be in Texas, a time of leniency to convicted murderers. So I ended up befriending one of the little murderers. I call her one of my little murderesses. And my little murderess, I would go and visit her in prison and get everybody in trouble because I'd sneak in a piece of fruit or a Diet Coke or something. And one time I snuck in a plum cot, which is a hybrid plum and apricot fruit,
Okay.
and nearly started a prison riot because about 18 inmates came over and saw this thing while my murderess was talking about what it was and said, we've been in here so long, they're making new fruit.
They're making new fruit.
And she would draw me pictures because inmates, and especially convicted murderers, they're not really allowed to have anything. And you can't mail them anything but paper. So I would mail her paper and she would draw me pictures, and I would draw her pictures and make art for her. And that's how we communicated. Little did I know, I didn't share this before, but my birth mother shot and killed her husband in self-defense when I was 13.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know them. I didn't know them from anybody in the whole world, but she was acquitted. And in Texas, I'm not aware of anybody who was acquitted.
Really?
Career, I never saw it happen. If you shoot and kill somebody, you go to jail. And so there was just a lack of understanding about that. But I thought it really interesting that somehow, I really believe this, that my soul was always in touch with my birth family. And eventually her daughter found me, and she said, I hear you're a hairstylist. And I'm like, yeah. And she goes, good, we need those in our family. And I said, well, I used to be a lawyer. She said, we need those too. And it turned out she had just gotten out of prison for being a meth addict and running a meth lab. And,
Wait, your birth mom or your birth sister?
My birth sister. My birth mom was 15 years older than me, and she really had kind of aged out of getting in too much trouble.
Yeah. Okay.
But it was just interesting. It's like I'd been studying the criminal justice system, drug addiction, overcoming childhood trauma, and here I meet my birth family, and they've had all of them terrible childhood trauma. They've got drug and alcohol issues with that exception, and they've all been involved with the criminal justice system. And here I was working on clemency, which means mercy. And these people needed mercy, Yeah. And I had grown in a way that I have clemency and mercy for human beings. This is a rough journey being human.
Indeed. That's I wish we would remember that, because I think we live in a culture right now where anything you say, we just forget that we're humans, and being human is messy. And trying to articulate our feelings and thoughts, and trying to understand what you know how to say true things. It's all messy, and it would be wise for us to just adopt grace and mercy for each other.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. I used to be involved with a Quaker organization that taught unlearning racism workshops.
Hmm.
And they would start every workshop by asking us to agree to grant each other amnesty, forgiveness in advance for the mistakes we're going to make with each other.
Oh wow, that's beautiful.
It was so beautiful.
That's cool.
And
That's
it
very,
changes
very
the
cool.
way people work together when
Yeah,
they have that agreement.
it's these little this little guy in the school I teach at. um he he's all over the place, right? This little dude. And so he's in kindergarten, and so I'll ask the class, is it okay that we let him play in this little area? And um and then I'll ask the class, will we be okay? Will we stay focused, or will we be distracted by him? And by asking them, they give their blessing to the little guy, right, to be
Oh,
himself. But they're
yeah.
also acknowledging that they kind of have to ignore him a little bit, right, so they can stay focused. And because if you don't, then all of a sudden he becomes this distraction, and the class is looking at him, and and this and that. And so when I kind of stumbled onto that questioning for them, and them giving their blessing to let him be him, and it's going to be okay even though he's different than all of us. um it just, I look forward to that class, and and yeah, so it's neat, it's neat. I didn't know that about your mom there, Cheryl.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, my mom killed my dad as well.
Oh,
And
wow. I didn't know that.
yeah, well, she didn't get clemency. She she spent 6 years in jail, and we,
Well, 6 years means they thought there was some extenuating circumstance.
yeah, well, yeah, she was very angry. And I remember being 6 years old, having to go visit her in this maximum security prison, and having to go through a strip search, and them checking all your
Mhm.
crevices and everything.
Yeah.
I'm like, ah, this is
Oh,
what I have
that's
to do.
some different. Wow.
you know, some people
I
go home and they say, "Mom, mom, what are we having?" I'm like, "Mom, there's nothing in there. Tell them to stop." Right? But
oh, oh, baby, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. It's interesting. Sometimes we think our common ground is art or whatever, but we have extra common ground. I represented a woman who killed her husband, and then I became her power of attorney. I didn't
wow.
do her defense. Somebody else did, but I had to find homes for her kids and you
Mm,
know her dog and her cat and close down her house because one day they're having dinner and the next day dad was dead and she's in prison and the kids are in custody and the pets who's taking care of them and the house is locked and there's wet laundry. It's just terrible. But her kids had to go visit their mom in jail, and I got to talk with the mother of the man that was killed, the grandma, and
mm-hmm.
she ended up taking the children. And I said, it is really, really important that those children be able to think well of both their parents,
Indeed.
the one who's in prison and the one who's gone, and find a way for them to think well of both their parents because that's who we are. That's where
Mm-hmm.
we come from. And that grandmother was so generous of spirit that she took those children to visit their mom in prison for Mother's Day. You
Mm,
know, I just thought that was amazing because her own baby was gone.
mm. That's incredible. It is. It's Some people say, "Why does God let bad things happen?"
Yeah.
And then you think, well, if that bad thing didn't happen, in what other way would we have seen that level of beauty, from the grandmother. And
I agree. It's a hard uh, position to share with others, but it shows just the majesty of the soul.
yeah, that's a beautiful way of putting it.
And
Wow.
your work shows that, the way you share yourself so freely and openly.
Hmm. It's interesting because you use that word generously, and that's something I've been really, really um, just spending a lot of time on lately, is focusing on being generous. And uh, and I'm just kind of curious if that's a result or a fruit of going through trauma and being able to somehow, by the grace of God, navigate it and come out on the other end.
Yeah,
If generosity is just an outpouring of that appreciation, you know,
because it's grace is how we come through the other end.
it's a what?
Nobody grace is the way we come through the other end. So if I have experienced trauma and I come out the other side, and I have so much grace operating in my life now, um, there's no way that I came into this world knowing how to navigate that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
there was grace. There were teachers, helpers, friends, neighbors, people who showed me mercy who didn't have to.
Yep.
And I even have a friend right now who I was introduced to him while I was in a flashback, having a full blown complex PTSD flashback. And he said, "Well, I have that challenge too, but I have some ways that I am growing through it, and I'd be willing to talk with you if you want to talk about it." And this man, we talk on the phone from two different cities once a week, and he shares his journey and what works on how to survive trauma, how to integrate the feelings and stay in my boots for him. And it's making me strong, Don Victor. I just am like, whoa, I thought I was so over emotional and so vulnerable, but it turns out that I'm strong.
Indeed. Indeed.
And sometimes it takes a team and it takes grace for us to see and discover that strength.
That's it. It's when we're not connected to the spirit, um, and we live purely by ego, then we're weak, and so in that weakness you have to, have this armor. You always have to be in control of everything. You always, have to protect yourself, and you live out of this self-preservation. um and if you're not in that kind of mode, then you're in this comfort mode, right, where you still want to protect. You don't want to lose anything, but you're comfortable. But it's really in that vulnerability where you open yourself up, that greater, that spirit can come out of you, that greater you.
Yeah,
And in a weird way, at that point it is you don't even want to put the word you to it, because it's not, it's just, there is no you. It's just the creator, the life coming through you.
yeah.
you know
Life living through you.
yeah. And that's, ultimately what we're doing as artists. We're, someone once said to me years ago, he said one of the things that he hates in life, like it's a pet peeve of his, right, is when someone says something, when he says something to someone and they go, "What?" Right? And then he has to go
Mhm.
back and repeat himself. And I asked him, I go, "Well, why is that?" He's like, "Do you understand the amount of work that goes into capturing an idea and then forming it into a logical order, using words and ideas and poetry and all these things, and then to put the energy behind it, using your body to cast it out in such a way that somebody else then can catch it and then unlock it, and then that which was in you is now in them." And then when they say, "What?" because they didn't receive it, because they weren't holding, they didn't have their hands out to catch the ball, right? They were trying to look for
Yeah.
loose change in their pockets, right? And then they get smacked
Mhm.
with the ball, and like, what? Can you throw it again, please? Um,
Yeah.
I um, but in that, that's using words, but as artists, that's what we're doing. It's like we're wrapping our word, we're incarnating the word into paint, right? This energy, this spirit, this concept, this idea, this prophetic moment, and then we're capturing it in our pencils and our mark making and our paint or whatever it is, in a way that when somebody else comes to see it at a later time, it can then decode itself and unlock that gift in them. And to me, that's communication, right?
Yeah.
Um, but So let me ask you, this is an interesting question. As an artist, where do you feel your psychology training and your lawyer training overlap? And how do they make you a better artist?
Hmm. That was so interesting. Uh, I also write, so that's one of my arts.
Mm,
And I've been noodling around with the idea of writing a book called Law and Beauty, and how I went from law to beauty school, you know, and devoting my life to beauty for the last 20 years. And so I just think, well, psychology generally is the study of humanity. I'm interested in humanity. And law is kind of the study of how to control humanity and,
mm,
get people to act right, And it's kind of interesting that after 14 years of that, I joined a 12-step program for people related to alcoholics,
mm,
and recognized that you can't control humanity. That's not the deal. You just have to let humanity be what it is, and basically try to help keep people in a rubber room if they need to be in a rubber room if they can't be safe. And so how does that relate to art? Well, probably early on in my life, I expressed freely and I expressed human stories in my art. And then I got a little bit tight with my art and tried to control it. Like my law years were all about being disciplined and goal oriented and aggressive in my plans and my execution of plans. And I get tight just speaking of it.
mm.
Um, I would say all my art during that time was in squares and rectangles. And then, I don't know, something happened. I woke up one day at 36 and said, if I carry on like this, when I get to the end of my life, I'll be able to say I made it to 85 years old and I paid my bills on time. And I'm not willing to do that with my life. So I quit my very good job 3 months short of my retirement vesting, and wandered
Wow.
for 10 months and tried. I did landscape design. I did cooking for professional women and bringing them meals. And um, I was a nanny. I just wanted to be active and moving and involved in life and not be sitting at a desk watching my behind spread. And from that point on, I was expressive with my art
Mm,
and not, I really don't worry about what anybody thinks of my art. And
hmm
I think because of that, I just slap down, paint whatever is in my heart to do. And I do it pretty fast. And when I'm done, people go, wow, that's amazing. So I don't sit around and try to get the hand right or scribble, scribble, erase, erase. I don't do that. I slap down a lot of color. So, uh, how does that relate to law and psychology? I don't know. I guess I took the handcuffs off, and I let myself paint. So there's one piece that I referenced in questions that I think of as being heroes of fire. And this was a piece that I just wanted to get a whole lot of color on a really large canvas. So this is like a 2x4 canvas.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to do it for my boyfriend. He had nothing on his walls. He had recently been divorced and he got away with nothing. I mean, the poor guy had a bed. That's all he had. And I said, I'm going to put something colorful on your wall. He's like, go ahead, do whatever you want. So I found a piece of wrapping paper and
Okay.
taped it up on my wall. And I know it had a real piece of art on there. I don't know why this happened the way it did, but there you go. It's somebody's art that I plagiarized, I'm sure. And I put on a book on tape, The Hobbit. And I'm painting for about 3 hours and slapping color on there. I'm sorry about that. I hope
Nope.
it doesn't break your ears.
No, it just went blank for a moment there.
Oh, okay, that was my phone ringing.
Oh.
Anyway, as I'm painting, I'm listening to this story about the good guys in The Hobbit become invisible and they go into the campsite of the bad guys. And the bad guys catch on that the good guys are there, but they're invisible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they start trying to have a sword fight with them. And the good guys climb up the trees and are really quiet. They're hiding in the trees. And the bad guys catch on and they set the trees on fire. And as I'm painting, I suddenly look at it and realize I have just painted this story. These trees are on fire. There are very clearly invisible people in them. and really all it is color. And there are no definable shapes of maybe 3 lines in the whole piece. And I put a big moon. I just felt like I wanted to have a big giant moon in the painting, so I added a big giant round moon. That's how law and psychology works for me in art.
All right. So then you went into beauty. So you're a hairstylist now,
I'm
right?
a hairstylist.
That's so cool. I always wanted to be a hairstylist when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
That or a backup dancer in a Latin band for some reason.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's Salinas, Dinos.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to be a roller disco queen.
What?
Yeah,
That's so cool. Maybe I think we were like brother and sister.
we might have been.
This is crazy. So tell us about your world in hair beauty and products.
Hair beauty. I love hair beauty. So hair is a way, it took me 10 months to, all the time I was going, 10 months, what am I going to do? I'm trying all these different jobs. What am I doing with my life? My friends were saying, you're going to be a hairstylist. I'm like, lawyers don't become hairstylists. Well, the truth is I've been doing hair since I was in 8th grade. I gave my first haircut when I was in 8th grade. It was a Dorothy Hamill, very awesome 1970s haircut. And I just kind of never stopped. So I did it all through college for my friends, and I like to play with color, but mostly, I just like it, picking somebody's head and their hair and their texture and giving a sculpture to it that has a pretty line. And and when I came to Austin, I noticed a few gorgeous haircuts, just perfect. And I would go up to them and say, who does your hair? And they all answered the same name. Deborah Dew. She was an artist also. And Deborah Dew in Austin, Texas. This was a lot of people in a town for me to spot all her clients.
Wow. Her work just stood out that much.
Yes, it stood out. And I will tell you, it stood out enough that 14 years later, I went to work for her.
Wow.
As a hairstylist, as a shampoo tech, because I was still in school. And
you were like, how old were you?
Well, I went to beauty school when I was 38.
Okay, and when did you go to work for her?
When I was 38.
Okay.
Yeah. While I was in beauty school, I went to work for her.
Okay, so but
Um,
14 years earlier, you were spotting her work.
oh yeah, spotting her work, asking her did her, and as a matter of fact, she retired right after. I mean, immediately after she said, "Yeah, you can come to work here." She moved to Seattle, Washington, and I saw all these people I'd been seeing around town for years, out in nightclubs and stuff, and their hair started looking sorry. And I would go
Oh.
up to them, and they didn't know me from anybody, and I would say, "Hey, who's doing your hair since Deborah Dew left town?" And they'd look at me like, "Why do you know who's doing my hair? And who are you? And do you know me?"
So Deborah Dew did the hair, but now she's Deborah Did, and
This is Deborah did. She has left this earth. She's no longer
Deborah
in my
did your hair. Now I do your hair.
but she sure helped me. And she told me clients come to you because of how you make them feel.
Indeed.
And
Yep.
she taught me a lot about how to make them feel treasured and attended to and cared for. And I have clients who I now work an hour and a half away from my original home, and I have many clients who drive an hour and a half to come and get their hair done with me.
Wow, how wonderful is that?
Yeah,
That's
it's pretty
beautiful.
wonderful.
I love hair, like the whole hair arts. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I've always said I think I would probably enjoy being married either to like a school teacher,
Mm-hmm.
just because of if they could tolerate these little kids, they could tolerate my shenanigans.
Oh
Um,
yeah, you need that.
but
I taught preschool for a short time, and it's so much fun. But my husband sometimes acts like my preschool kids. He really never stops moving. He's always whistling. He's always happy. And I compare him to a Labrador because if I walk out of the room and I come back, it's like, "You're home, you're home. It's so exciting. I'm so glad you're here." And it's
that's
like a dog.
awesome.
Every
It's
time
like
you come to see your dog sees you and they jump on you and they wag their tail. And
so
yeah,
you call him a dog, it's actually a compliment, not an insult.
yeah,
That's
he's a lot.
nice.
Yeah,
But I always said like I at least in theory would love to be married to a hairstylist because I think of a hairstylist and obviously there's stress in any work that you're in. But the
right.
idea of having somebody come in who's maybe not feeling very good, feeling
Yeah,
crappy, and then, in an hour you basically totally change their life.
yep,
Like and to do that multiple times a day, to be
yep,
able to like really touch somebody's soul in a
yep.
tangible way, that must be so incredible.
That's what it is, Victor. That is exactly what it is. I get to do it all day long. So I get to truly be a healer and an artist and a scientist, a
Hmm,
therapist, all of it. And I get to touch people, and that, in touching people over 20 years, I've grown in intuition
mm-hmm.
and energy. And, no matter what kind of stress I may be experiencing, it's my responsibility to put them at ease. And
Yeah,
they're very vulnerable. It's very vulnerable to have somebody working on your head.
yeah.
And so I have to be gentle and, you know, put them
And,
at their ease.
and being Puerto Rican,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you don't mess my hair up, right? So I, I remember
Uh-huh.
I went to this one barber shop or stylist or whatever, and the lady was new, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna trust, okay, at some level. And so, but as soon as she touched my head, I got up and I said, no, 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 because her fear and her timidness and her lack of confidence was felt in the way she touched my head
Yeah.
that I was like, no. It's one thing having not that much experience. It's another thing being not even confident, right? Or
It's
sure of
like a
yourself.
horse. If you try to ride a horse when you don't feel confident, then
Mm,
respond to you.
yeah, the energy transfers,
Yeah.
and so I felt so bad for making her feel bad, but I was the one who had to walk around for a month with her inability, Uh,
Yeah.
but um, I'll tell you
Good
another,
call.
I'll tell you another funny story about a hairstylist. I was in Puerto Rico and I needed my hair cut, and so I'm trying to find a place to get a haircut. And all I see is unisex salons, right? So I'm thinking, wait, a salon in the States typically tends to be for women. So I was like, oh, okay, that must be a woman's thing. I'm looking for a barber, not a salon. And unisex, uni meaning one sex. Oh, it must be what they say, like that must be like a woman's style thing.
Huh.
Um, but I was totally wrong. So unisex in Spanish culture means it's open for everybody, right?
Uh-huh.
So, but I ended up finding this guy, and he was like super, super skinny. Like I don't know if he was on drugs or what, but he was super skinny. And he's like, "Oh, I can cut your hair." And so my two buddies and I went, and he cut my hair. So he brought us to this place, and there was no air condition. It was hot as heck, and he puts that cloak on you, but it was like this heavy black one, and so I'm like dying. I'm like sweating. I'm like, oh. And so I thought, I'm gonna try to talk Spanish to this guy. And so I wanted to say, I'm really I'm really hot, right? And so what I should have said was Joe Joe calor. That means I'm hot. But what
Uh-huh.
I accidentally said was too caliente, right?
Oh dear.
To which he said, Joe, right? And I was like, oh, I said it right. And so with even mucho gusto, like mucho passion, like I was like, sí, tú caliente. And he's like, oh, and he cut my hair, and then he said he wanted to wash my hair, right? And I'm like, I don't know if I feel comfortable with a dude washing my hair, but I was like, you know what? I'm from Puerto Rico. I'm in a different place. I'm going to surrender and submit to the hair washing, right?
Oh my
And
gosh.
oh my gosh, he must have felt that I surrendered into his loving arms, and he slipped me his number when I paid him, and I was like, "What the what? What?" My friends are laughing. Oh my god, I was so unaware.
That's hilarious.
Like, oh, he's so bold and he's so vulnerable. Uh, yeah, stories.
Yeah,
So that's cool, Cheryl. I'm so happy that you do that. Um,
love it. I really do.
that's really really cool. So when I come to Texas, I'll have to have you cut my hair.
Oh, that would be a blast. I would love that.
But
That
if
would
it's
be.
hot, I
Oh,
will
it's
say
hot.
"Joe calor."
Yeah. Well, in French, I speak French. You say I have heat to mean I'm hot, right? But if you say I am hot, it means I'm caliente. It's a little
Ah,
different.
nice, interesting, interesting. Ah, yeah, 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 yeah.
So,
So that's cool. Well, so let me ask you my favorite question. What do you love to eat?
I love to eat chocolate. And I'm pre-diabetic, and I've been fighting it off for a few years now. And I'm just this side of diabetes, but I love anything chocolate. I love ice cream, and I like hot wings.
Hot wings. You ever eat
Hot
like
wings are
chocolate covered hot wings?
chicken wings in a hot sauce.
Oh, like super hot.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so good.
You like it so hot that you don't have to put red lipstick on afterwards.
That's right. Yeah. Uh, if I ain't hurting, I'm not happy with the experience.
Okay.
I like my wings hot.
Like my wings hot. Do you ever make your own wings, or is there a place that you like to go?
Oh, this is so bad. There are lots of places. Hot wings are good wherever you can get them. But my favorite place to eat hot wings is Alamo Draft House because they bring them to you while you're watching a movie.
Oh, really? Oh, that's
Yeah,
cool.
it's
That's
great.
very cool.
A movie where they can bring you ice cream and hot wings, and you can have chocolate too brought to you. It's pretty great.
Can you order other food there?
Yeah, they have a
Okay.
full menu.
Yeah, we have a place like that called the Cinema Grill here. But my first time I ever experienced something like that was in Atlanta, Georgia.
Uh-huh.
And I almost went postal because I I can't stand when people eat with their mouth open.
Ah,
And we were in a place where it was kind of maybe a little accepted by the culture to eat food like that.
the smack 'em.
Yeah. And so I'm in this place trying to watch this movie, and you just hear, and I'm like, "Ugh." But what made it exact? But what made it even worse was we were watching The Contender, which was about this first president woman, first woman running for president. This was back in I think like the 90s, the early 2000s, right? And so there's this point where this congressman and the I guess the contender they're talking, but they're talking over food, and this congressman keeps smacking as he's talking to this lady, right? And so you have the people around you smacking. You have this big close up image of this guy's face, and he's opening his mouth while he's eating, and you got that enormous sound coming out through the big speakers. And I was just like, I think I died and went to hell. It was just horrendous. But yeah, that was my first. So every time I heard of those places you can eat and watch a movie, they kind of always scared me, um, because of that experience. But now I go to the one over here all the time. It's fun. So so do you make anything like with like chocolate?
No.
No, you just go out and
No, my husband does all the cooking in our home.
yeah. So what's something
And
that he makes that when he makes it, you're like, oh yay.
oh, he makes salmon that's
Really?
delicious and pretty basic steamed broccoli, and he makes oatmeal with pumpkin in it.
What? Really? That
And he
sounds
makes the same
good.
things every day. He makes poached eggs. He used to be a baker and a cook. He's a very interesting guy. He's one of the founders of Whole Foods.
Really?
Hmm.
What? How cool
Yeah,
is that?
and very adventurous person. He got on a plane once with his bicycle and in the luggage department and assembled it in the airport in Paris and just hopped on it and rode his bike to Nice. And by the time we met, he had lost his fortune and left Whole Foods and had started a pizza place that he ran for 26 years. So he did a lot of cooking and food formulating and recipe formulating. Very, very good cook.
That's beautiful.
And but the fact that he was broke and I was broke and we both left lucrative careers that we hated, I was like,
You're
man,
perfect
we're
for each
made
other.
for each other.
We could be broke together or
Yeah,
build something.
yeah.
That's awesome. That's beautiful. That's so cool. So I learned a lot about you in this conversation. And I feel honestly that our coming together may actually be for far greater reasons than you and I ever anticipated.
I think so too. I hope that's true. And I hope we get to meet in the flesh one of these days.
We shall. Texas is a place, if given an opportunity, I would move and live for quite a while.
Yeah,
I've
I love it. I've been here, 35 years and I just love it. And I've lived in Honolulu, Chicago, Boulder, Colorado,
mm,
Tahiti. I've
what?
lived in lots of cool places.
And what part of Texas are you in?
Central, South
Central,
Central. Once you get south of New Braunfels, you're in South Texas.
South
It's,
Texas.
it's really Mexico. They just moved the border.
So, like, at one time you said you were in Austin, right?
Yes,
And
Austin's a little further north.
what do you feel about Austin?
I don't enjoy Austin anymore. A lot of
Oh.
people, when I went there in the 80s, it was all about live music
Mm-hmm.
and being open-hearted and generous and fun and just having a great time. But we've packed more and more and more people there, and the property taxes are so high that the
Mm.
working class can't afford to live there. And I'm now a member of the working class, so I had to leave.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, that's sad to hear that.
Yeah,
You're
it's
breaking
we
my
don't have an
bubble.
income tax in Texas, so all our things are paid for by property tax, which
Ah, okay.
it affects everybody at the same rate. And if you have a beautiful home that you've scrimped and saved and paid off, if property values rise because people want to move into your area, your taxes can get so high that they're more than your house payment was. So
Yeah, and if you don't pay the
people end up
taxes,
being
then you lose your
driven from their
house.
home. Yeah, people end up being driven from their homes. Even if you don't pay it, the city or state city will take your home,
Psh,
yep, and sell it.
wow. Be like,
It's
thanks for
kind of
paying it off for
tragic.
us. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind
Yeah,
of
I always
tragic.
hear about that up in Pennsylvania too. You have people who pay their homes off and they're older or whatnot, and you know, maybe the husband dies and the wife didn't even know about these things, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Sorry, you gotta move."
Yeah,
It's like, what? I've been here for 70 years. What are you talking about? I gotta
yeah. That's
move.
the only thing that would make a lawyer out of me again is uh, is helping to restructure the property tax system.
Hmm.
It unfairly, it disproportionately affects poor people.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, Cheryl, on that note, thank you for this conversation.
Well, thank you, Don Victor. It's a joy getting to know you, and I'll miss it when we're not talking on the phone regularly.
Well, let's try not to make that happen.
Good.
All right. Ciao.
Many blessings, my friend.
Bye.
In just 30 days, the Core 80 experience teaches you to decode the intentional design underneath great masterpieces. Through video lessons, assignments, and feedback, you learn to recognize the underlining structures like thrust maps, echoes, and gamuts that give master compositions substance and gravitas. Knowing how master artists and illustrators compose their artwork unlocks your ability to give your artwork more meaning and energy. Enroll today and get a 7-day no-hassle money-back guarantee at core80.com.